Welcome to California Clays, where we will dive into the world of competitive shotgun sports through conversations with some of the best shooters, coaches, and characters in the game. Today, I'm joined by a true California standout, Justin Fox. If you shoot sporting clays in the Golden State, you already know the name Justin. He started young, trained under the guidance of Jay Braccini and Dan Carlisle, and quickly rose through the ranks from junior state champion to a two-time California state champion, winning it all in 2021 and 2023. He is also a nine-time All-American, and from 2003 to 2011, he won every junior and sub-junior title in California and the Western region. Justin was inducted into the California State Hall of Fame in 2018 and known not just for his shooting, but for the professional way he carries himself on and off the course. Today, we're going to talk about Justin's journey, his mindset, training routines, and what it takes to stay sharp at the top. Let's jump right in. Hey, Justin, welcome to the California Clays podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Henning. I appreciate the invite.
Hey, man, it's been a while since I've seen you. I think the last time I saw you was at the Stockton Trap and Skeet Halise shoot. I think it was maybe it was the USHA qualifier, or was it the Nationals? I can't remember which one it was. But what have you been up to since then? That was like a couple of years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, no, that was the national. That was my first big ZZ Bird shoot. That was pretty cool coming from a sporting clays guy. Just been working, hunting a lot, and shooting a little clays on the side.
Right
So
on.
we're
So speaking of work, what do you do for work? I don't think I know that.
I work for a pest control company. My father started the company 42 years ago. We're working on our 43rd year this year, and we do everything from black bears to termites. Um, and I do mean that we do the local county out here where we do all the predators within the county. And so any calls that come in within the county, we take care of. So
And
it's
sorry, what
always
county is that?
San Bernardino County.
San Bernardino. Okay.
Yeah. So it's the largest county in the nation. So we can get, I mean, we got big bear out here. And so anything that's breaking into cabins mainly is what we get for bears. So it keeps things interesting.
No, I bet. I mean, from termites to bears, that's a wide variety of vermin and creatures, I believe, you know? So what's been the most interesting one that you've had to kind of tackle?
I didn't get to go on this job, but when I was a kid, my dad had to do a beaver job where the beavers were actually cutting down trees that had an endangered species bird in it. And so they had to go and remove 25 beavers from this park because they were killing all the endangered birds in
Oh,
it, which
wow.
is pretty neat. But they all got relocated to local zoos and stuff. But I think the principal thought he was crazy. He said, "Hey, I can bring some beavers over for the kids," because we were still in elementary school, me and my sister. And said, he said, "Oh yeah, bring them over." Well, on 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he said, "Hey, I'm coming. I'll be there in 30 minutes," which was pretty funny. We uh, we were the highlight of the day for the school.
So wait, now the beavers got replaced or relocated, or was it the birds?
No, the beavers did. They
Okay.
removed all the birds because endangered species. When you get an endangered species, especially in California, it's nobody can touch them unless you have a permit from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is the feds. And so beavers had to go.
Right on. That's funny. No, it's always interesting to hear kind of what everyone does for a living outside of the shooting game. You know, not
Yeah,
everyone is shooting is their main profession, but I feel like it's almost kind of been your second profession though. You've been on the California scene from what I know for a long time. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and personal story in California shooting and how you got into
yeah,
it?
yeah. So me and my dad first started shooting in the sporting clays, basically just as hunters, because that's what I love to do. That was like one of my first passions, and so was my dad's. So we actually booked a lesson with Dan Carlisle when I was like 9 years old, and he came out locally every quarter to Rahagi's down the road from here, and that's kind of how I got introduced to just clay pigeons in general. He used to come over every quarter, and I go and take one or two lessons. But 9 years old, I wasn't able to shoot very much. And if you ever shot with Dan, you burn through a case pretty quickly. Um, so wasn't until I got older I got a little bit more involved with it. I say by the time I was 11, I was shooting pretty regularly, and then that's how I also met Jay Braccini. Jay was the one that I turned about 13 years old. We really started going. I mean, we were hitting every big shoot there was on the West Coast. That was the first year I won sub junior in the state of California, and from there it really just took off. Um, we went everywhere from TM Ranch in Florida for the Seminole Cup all the way to Alaska in the same year in '09, not '09, '06, chasing the sub junior captain for the All American team. We got it done that year, but it's crazy where sporting clays will take you.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely true. So going back to Carlisle and Jay, how are they pivotal in your training and your development?
So Jay and Dan taught the same method. It's the pull away method, which is what I've always used. I've kind of tweaked a few things, but for the most part, I've always just done the pull away method. And I say they were able to help me. Um, Jay was local, so Jay was able to help me get going on taking me out regularly. So I was doing almost 3 times a week with Jay when we were really starting to get heavy training. When I really wanted to get really competitive in this, because I was doing horses at the time when I first started shooting, and then I kind of backed away from that and I went full tilt in the sporting clays.
So was he your coach mentor, or was he a travel partner that kind of took you under his wing, or you mentioned he taught the Carlisle method, right?
Correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
he was both. He was like my second dad. He lived 20 minutes down the road from me,
Yeah.
so he was able to take me out regularly. They both taught the same method. So when Dan came in the town, you know, it was like Dan never left because they both taught the same method. I mean, Carlisle and Jay used to travel the world together back when they were first making sporting clays.
Okay.
When they were like the first ones to bring it west of the Mississippi is what I heard. I'm not sure if that was true or not. I can't testify to that. But yeah.
So what was it like training with Dan? A lot of the greats that we know in the sport today have had, interactions with Dan, from everything from Olympic shooters to sporting clay shooters and great trap shooters. What were your takeaways from working with Dan, and what was it like?
Um, you know, Dan's very intense.
I've heard that a lot about Dan. Can you maybe shed some light about it? How's he intense?
I think it's just his approach on things. Being an Olympic medalist, I think you kind of have to have that type of approach to it to be good at the game, especially if you're going to be teaching somebody, especially such a mental game. You need to be mentally strong. That's what Dan is. Um, but he's trying to build the catalog of targets you have. So you just want to keep shooting and shooting and shooting until it's basically second nature.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you would burn so many shells when you're doing it with it. But I feel like that's almost with any coach. You want to just keep on building your list of targets that you've seen, so that way it's kind of just easy to go to when you go to the next station.
Yeah. 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 No, that makes sense. When you were working with them, if you don't mind sharing this, I know it's kind of personal. Everyone's got their own personal journey and development and everything. But what was it that you had to work on as part of your training with him? Like, what did he see in your shooting that he's like, okay, Justin, you need to do this?
Um, I've always had really good eyes. I don't know if there was exactly one thing. I think with somebody that only comes quarterly, I think it has to do with more of how motivated that person is to keep going. Because there's always going to be a roadblock until you just basically figure it out one day. Whether that person is just starting out or you've been doing this for a long time. Like when you shoot in the '90s for the first time, you remember exactly what it was. It's always kind of like it's a space where you've never been there before, so you don't know how to achieve it. Um, but it's mainly, especially when someone only comes like quarterly, like he used to. But that's where Jay helped me out a lot. He was able to really push me, really get past all those things, and once we got going, I mean, it was rolling quickly for me
Mhm.
at least.
Can I ask about that too? Because I think this is super important and for parents out there that are working with their kids and coaches out there that are working with their kids. What about Jay's push worked for you in terms of was he just encouraging? Was he, keeping your head focused on what the task it was at hand? Like, how did he help you?
Yeah, I mean, he was basically my second father. Um, on the road, we would travel together. We almost died every day trying to get to the range when we went to England, driving on the wrong side of the road. Um, I still have nightmares about that. You can ask my mother. Um, but he knew when to push and when not to push. He knew that I needed to be pretty. I needed some type of humorous thing to break up the monotony of trying to be really competitive. And I think one of the key things I had starting out was I was way too. If I don't hit this target, I'm gonna lose. I had that mindset going into things, and that is not where you need to be for sporting clays. Um, I
Interesting.
found, especially in the later years, I found the more relaxed I am. I always knew I had to be relaxed, but the more that I just don't think things are on the line, the better I perform under pressure.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
that makes any sense to you. If
Oh,
I just
absolutely.
think that
Yeah.
I'm going to a local shoot, I'll be fine.
Hmm.
If I think this is the national championship, everyone watch behind me. If I try to put that type of pressure on myself, I won't do nearly as well as I could have. I think.
It's so interesting because a lot of professionals have said this. You're obviously bringing it up and have experienced it. The and just on a much smaller scale, I've experienced it well. When the pressure isn't on you, you can perform. What do you think it is about that? Is it the stress? Is it the doubt? Is it the fear that creeps in? Or and when you don't have that, you feel like you can perform and you're more in a flow state? What is it for you?
Yeah, you always think of fear, but I just try to always you try to use it as motivation, but sometimes that fear can creep in there and put those little doubts. Like the last time I won California State as an HOA, I just went in there have fun. I knew I was shooting well from the weeks prior leading up to that shoot, and I knew that if I just went and had fun with my friends, I was going to do well, and it showed. Um, I was lucky enough to take HOA that time in 23, but um, it's all just a mindset. I mean, I think this game is 90% mental, 10% physical. It's the
Hmm.
same thing with golf.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Now, do you feel that a lot of that, they always say initially that the first part of that saying is when you start out, it's 90% mechanical, 10% mental, and then it becomes the 10% mechanical, 90% mental. So you obviously achieved the mechanical part of it. What did you have to work on to make that rote for you? I mean, other than shooting forever, right? But what
yeah.
does it take to get the mechanics right?
Starting young, obviously. It's if you start young, I don't think you can create bad habits. There's a lot of people that have bad habits and then they go to a coach. I think if you start out with a coach, you won't have nearly as many bad habits. I was fortunate enough to take them when I was fairly young and kind of get some guidance on what to do. For me, it was just building strength, hand-eye coordination. Once your hands will follow wherever your eyes go, then the game became really easy. You didn't have to, guess, hey, this is where I need to hold, pull away, and then shoot.
Right, right, right. Okay, so touch on that a little bit. I know what you're talking about, but let's elaborate on that more. It's in a lot of the shooting games. Obviously, you need to move with your eyes because if you're not looking at the target, you're not going to be able to point at it, right? So, when did that click for you in terms of this is now how I shoot the game and how I approach it?
What do you mean by that?
How did it start to click for you where it stopped being like more of a conscious like whole point,
Yeah.
break point, you know what I mean, visual focus point to now I'm just looking at the target and making the right move.
Yeah. It was, I don't know if there was so much, it's just repetition. That's all it is, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
There wasn't just one particular time, I do remember vividly when I first shot my first 90. It was a 97 at a state shoot, and I was like, where did that come from? I never shot a 90 before. There's 97. I just tied Brandon Powell and Zach Keenbaum at the state championship. What the heck am I doing here?
Okay.
I'll never forget that. That was the first time I ever met Zach too. That was a Comanche a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. So was that the one? Did he end up winning that one? I think he ended up winning that one, right?
Zach won it in a shoot off with Brandon on Sunday.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty epic. It was a great shoot.
Comanche's a great place. No, I love that. I've been there for a couple of states too, or the last state that they had at least.
Yeah.
So when you were there, that was the moment for you. Do you think that was the moment where you're like, all right, I can compete with these guys. That means I can play on the big stage.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
So I never shot a 90 before that. And I went and shot 390s that weekend after that main event score, which is crazy. But
What do you think was different about that time? Was it just, you're going to go have fun and then it just happened or
yeah, there's nothing that really changed on anything. We didn't work on anything beforehand. It's just one of those things where it finally just clicked and I
right.
did well after that. Once you have the confidence, then it's for me, people gain confidence in different ways. People shoot a lot. Some people will shoot 10 to 15 cases the week before nationals before they go and shoot it. I was never like that. I don't like shooting a lot. It's not that I don't like shooting a lot. I love to shoot. I just don't want to be doing competitive rounds. I'm the type of guy where you need to be hungry and I want to do it in order
There have
to
to be
do
some
well.
stakes.
Yes. So
Okay.
once you shoot a lot, like when I shot 10,000 registered birds in one year, I didn't want to have the drive to go and, hey, I want to go and I want to win this shoot. You're always competitive. I'm always competitive, but I didn't have the drive to want it as bad as I did. So I found, for me at least, the best thing to do is I'll take a break. And when I want to go back and shoot, because I always go hunting, obviously can't see behind me. um, During the hunting season, I come back around February or March and I want to shoot. I want to go out and compete and I want to go kick some butt. And that's what I like to do. But
So,
I'm totally different. You take my sister, for example, multi-time national champion. She has to shoot a lot in order to feel confident to go and compete.
right, right. Yeah, I'm probably in that camp myself. Like I have to build up my confidence. Not that I'm a great shooter or anything like that by any stretch, but for my level of shooting, I have to shoot a lot to keep that flow and to keep that muscle memory and everything making me feel confident about where I'm at. For folks like myself and others who are looking to chase their first big win, what do you think separates champions from everybody else?
Mindset,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I walk into a course. I don't care where I am in the world. I feel like there's not a target that someone can throw that I have not seen before and that I can't hit.
Okay.
Um, that's a total mindset thing for me. I think the very first year of the PSCA, that was a, a rude awakening for people. I'll never forget. I think there was 14 stations, and when they finally brought in amateurs, they can come and shoot. Someone in E class shot an 8 out of 100. That means they took 6 zeros
Yeah.
somewhere along the way, even more possibly, but a minimum of 6 zeros. But you know, I just love hard targets. The harder, the better. I love shooting, doing shoot offs and stuff like that, just because I love hard targets.
So
Because
what
I
was that?
always feel like,
Yeah,
no, go
what was
ahead.
that like with the PSCA? So you're saying there were E-class shooters at the PSCA as well?
Well, you could so on. There was a certain day where you go in and anybody can go in and shoot the targets that we qualified on.
Got it.
Before the actual like the Sunday where you had to go head to head in the cages. This is the first year under Carlisle's game that I'm referring to. But yeah, there's somebody in E class that shot an 8 out of 100.
Wow.
Actually, I think it might have been 120 because qualifying was a little bit different. But
Now, what was different from what you've seen in California and your national shooting at the PSCA? Like, what made it so much more difficult?
targets were crazy. I'll never forget the very first event. It was at Abel's in Texas, and I'll never forget. Anthony Matarese was talking about shooting the same target twice, so that way he could hit 50% at the station. I'm like, excuse me, Anthony Matarese talking about shooting the same target twice. It's pretty wild. Yeah, it was just targets were crazy, but I loved it. There's a lot of people that hated it. I loved it. I don't feel like there's a target out there that I can't hit.
Right.
So that's
So
why I
are we talking
love.
speed, angle, distance, or what was it? What made it so much more difficult? Just stuff that you'd never
So
seen before.
yeah, I was just, I'll never forget. There was one in Houston they threw. It was probably 45 yards to the left, and the other trap was about 45 yards to the right. It was a true pair, all spring, both time, same time, true pair. It's like, okay,
Going
right
out or
before,
crossing?
no, straight out,
Oh, wow.
45 yards on like each side of the cage. Those were your two traps, full spring, straight out. I'm like,
What was your approach to that?
shoot really quick and try to shoot the second one before it hit the trees. I mean, that was the only thing you could do. Try not to take a zero or hit one. Or there's a lot of times where people were just shooting the same bird twice if they missed it because it was pointless to try to shoot the other one because it was so far gone already. But yeah, it was just a different mindset. But I love that type of stuff.
Yeah. No, I think, like I said, I'm not trying to compare myself to you, but I also enjoy the more difficult targets. I think that's why most people become sporting clay shooters is because they're looking for try to beat me,
Challenge.
try to give me a target's presentation that I can't hit. Because that's the challenge of sporting clays, right? Is being able to hit every type of presentation, not the same presentation over and over and over again. While that also has its own skill and expertise, I think folks like us tend to lean towards doing the more difficult types of targets. Going back to your wins on the California State, you won it in 2021, 2023. Were they different for you each year? Like I know one year you mentioned that you hadn't even shot or trained at all that year and you just came to shoot for fun. Was that 2021 or 2023?
2021, I had hardly shot any targets that year. It was kind of a back burner thing. It was in my backyard. It was the LA Clays, and I didn't have very high expectations going in, which is probably why I did well. But I just I don't know. I just luck of the draw. I think it is. I
Yeah.
always try to stay on the humble side. I'm not going to say that I was better than anybody else. I just went there to have fun, and I think that it showed because I did well at that shoot. I'm just fortunate enough. But
Yep, yep. No, I hear you. I hear you. I think I was the first year I punched into master, and I told myself, look, you're not going to win smack. Just try to be in the top 50% of master class shooters, and not be below it, right?
yeah,
And I ended up
100%.
shooting at least my personal best at the time, so that was decent. So I totally get the taking the pressure off you and just having some fun with it. Because at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're shooting at clay plates in the sky, right?
100%.
So
Absolutely. But I think it's kind of funny though that we talk about how you like hard targets as well, but there's a lot of people that hate having one station that's a hard target.
right.
It's
What
crazy
do you
to
think
me.
about that? Like you're sporting clay shooter, but you hate the one station with the hard target. What do you think that is?
I think that's just ego of people.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I mean, at a state championship, if someone throws, last year when it was at Quail Point, and they had some really good targets. I thought they had really good targets last year. And there's a lot of people complaining. I just can't understand why you would go to a state championship and think that you're just going to get fluff birds the entire state championship.
Right.
I never understood that. If you're at a state championship, a regional championship, U.S. Open, or national championship, you have to have hard targets in order to separate people. It's a championship for a reason.
Right. Right.
So,
No, I seem to recall grumblings about that as well. Look, I think there's some valid points because some people think that it's, edging out some of the older folks that don't have as good of eyes or whatever it is. But I feel like that's the whole reason for classes and the concurrence, right?
yep,
If that's what kind of balances that out and the difficulty out. But at the end of the day, we're all shooting. It's called sporting clays for a reason. So they're supposed to be sporting targets, meaning difficult,
yep,
challenging, affected by weather, affected by conditions. And unlike Halise, there's not a lot of luck. I mean, there's still a lot of skill, but there's a little bit of luck because you can have a bad weather situation. You could have, different conditions for your rabbits or whatever you're dealing with. But that's what makes it interesting. A majority of it's going to be relatively fair, though, and so the luck factor is a very small part of it. In Halise, There's a bigger luck factor, I think, in there because you could get random draws and pulls, and people respond to different targets different ways. Some have
Yep.
benefits of, the crossers. Some have benefits of just lollipop targets that just go straight up in the air. And that's why it's probably one of those good games out there for who's going to win because anyone can win.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I think the skilled shooter, especially in sporting clays, will figure it out, and it just is what it is. I always was surprised by folks who want certain tournaments to be only at certain clubs. I feel like as a competitor, you should want to have a variety of clubs to shoot at because, just to give an example of Quail Point and LA Clays, both are great clubs, both set great targets. They just have different venues and different terrain and different backgrounds. And so I think
100%.
that adds to the flavor of what a competitor gets to shoot.
Yep.
It's not about, the amenities outside of the shoot. It's more about what are you getting at the actual shoot that
At the shoot.
right.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. And
Yeah.
I don't think that you should have hard targets throughout every single one. I think there should be at least one station per course that has some type of target that's can separate, a master from an E-class shooter. You
Right.
know, the
Right.
masters from the people that just got there because of sub gauge back in the day. It used to be. Um, so I'm not saying that an entire course should be hard for a state championship. Um, I just know if you go overseas, especially, those targets are a lot more tough. They're a lot tougher overseas than they are here in the States.
Right.
So,
I think what it boils down to also is a lot of folks, like, for the most part, there's a lot of folks out there that can hit any target, but it's about hitting it consistently that becomes the thing, right? And I think a lot of it involves training, experience. A lot of the top shooters, yourself included, you guys have been doing this since you were 10 years old. I started when I was 36. I'm 47 now. And so I don't have that database built as much as you guys do. So I'm
yep,
not going to sit here and compare myself to you guys in my ability and my training. Heck, if I shoot as good as you guys, I'm ecstatic. But I think it all boils down to training and the time, energy, and effort you put into things. So in regards to that, what is your typical train? What did your typical training look like? Are you still training? How do you train when you're training?
it's not so much something I'm looking for while I'm shooting or trying to train. It's more of a mindset for me. You know, I'll probably go out and do a couple shoots before the state shoot this year, which is down next to my house, and I'm just looking for I'm looking for consistency when I'm shooting. Like, I'm shooting crossers, quarters, whatever I need to work on. And then I might work on those things if I still need extra time, I might go and practice outside of a tournament. Because I'm just talking about straightly like the fun shoots and stuff, shooting. I hardly have time anymore to where I can go out on like a Wednesday and go out and shoot the club anymore. I used to a lot. I think I've already put in the sweat time ahead of now, before to be able to say, hey, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to go out on a Wednesday anymore after school and shoot. But it's feeling confident in myself and the shooting, and the rest will just pretty much trickle out for how I feel I need to be before a big tournament.
Okay.
It's all just a mindset to me.
Well, so do you have any drills or routines that you do for mindset or for, certain target presentations that you want to work on because you're feeling less confident about those?
Not really. I'll go back to the basics of what Carlisle taught me. You hold, you have a hold point. This is your pull away. Wherever you see it the clearest is where you're going to pull the trigger. I always just try to go back to the basics on things if I'm really struggling on something.
Yeah.
I'll have somebody tell me, hey, you're behind this one bird, which if I'm shooting, I'm typically in front of it by a mile. If I'm missing anything, I hardly miss behind. But um, I try to go back to the basics of what Dan taught me back in the day. And if I'm ever in a slump,
Okay. And so it sounds like you simplify it also, right? Because there's so many ways to dissect this game, and I think the more you learn and the more you work with coaches and people, everyone's got their different style, everyone's got their different approach.
100%.
They're all good. It just depends on the student, if you will, because every student's going to respond to a certain coach a certain way.
Yep.
Um, so would you say that your approach to things is simplifying it and focusing more on your hand-eye visual coordination?
Yeah. It's simplified to me is just easier. Um, I'm not so technical like Anthony always is about stuff, especially the mental side of it. Um, I wish I could be like that a little bit more, but I just like simplified version of anything that I do. So that's just what I find to be the most successful for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way myself. I can't get too technical. I want to learn it, but then I want to
Yeah,
forget it and just go back to it. So would you say you're more of a feel shooter? Like there's people that call it feel shooters versus technical shooters.
100%. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. When it feels good, that's yeah.
got it.
There's a groove. When you're in the groove, everything is peachy.
Yeah,
When you're out of the groove, it's not so great.
yeah. And what's interesting about that is, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm thinking for field shooters like myself and yourself, you just said it, like when it's not great, you don't know what's not great about it. Do you have a way of like figuring it out and moving into your technical game then at that point, or do you just go, okay, look, I got to get back into the feel of what this is?
Yeah. So if I'm in a slump or something like that, it's just running through flats of shells until I feel like I'm back on track.
Got it.
That's basically what I'm gonna do.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So it's getting that feel back again for you.
Correct.
Yeah.
To feel confident. When I was trying to become captain of the All American team as a sub junior, the first time I tried to do it, we were on the road constantly. I mean, we went from Florida to Alaska in the same year, and there wasn't. I never practiced. It was the next shoot. It was the prelim, and then the main, and then a flight home to catch school by Monday morning. And so I didn't have time to get off track. It was a straight shot. For me, the reason we had to travel so much is because back then, in order to become a captain, all the point system was based off how many attendees or how many sub juniors you basically had in the class multiplied by five. Well, the guy I was chasing, he lived in Texas. They have 20 sub juniors at the local shoot. We don't have 20 sub juniors at Rahagis.
Right.
So I had to travel a lot in order to try to uh, get to where Justin Royal was uh, to be able to catch up on points. So we had to travel a lot.
So was he one of your main competitors and rivals that kind of kept your motivation going, would you say?
Yeah, for All American, yes, 100%. He he lived in Beaumont and he had a lot of clubs pretty close to him that he could go and get a lot of points at. For me, I had to go to Wisconsin. I found a lot of places that had a lot of sub juniors, and we chased it. We had those magazines back in the day. We would find out how many sub juniors were at those shoots. That's where we would go the next year.
Yeah.
That's how we figured it out.
Okay. That's interesting. So talk about that a little bit. What was it like? First of all, what was it like in California shooting back in the day? I only started in 2013, so I only know it from then. But prior to 13, who were the names? Who were the people? I know Zach was here. I know Tom John's been a staple. Who were the
Yeah,
big names at the time?
yeah. Zach was a big one. Tommy's always been around. I think I knew Tommy before I knew Zach. Um, Tommy's local also. Zach lived up north from me, um, but they those were the big guys. We had some other people here for a little while, but they went back. There's also way back in the day. I know Scott Robertson used to be from California as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that. So a lot of great shooters come from California. I think we have the weather, obviously. You take somebody like Radulovic and they got snow half the year.
Yeah.
We're sunny Southern California. You're able to practice year round out here. So um, for me, I mean, I've been shooting since '03. I won my first sub junior title. I'm trying to think of the guys way back in the day. Um, there's an Allen that I can't remember his last name, but um, yeah. Anyways, I can't remember his name. So, what was the
What
other part of the
were the
question? I forgot.
targets? How are the targets then versus?
Oh yes, yeah. So I think the targets. I don't know if it was how I perceived things back then, and I thought things were harder, but I always thought the targets were a lot harder back in the day than they are now.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's how I perceive things. Like I go up to
Skill
them.
set because of your skill
Yeah,
set, right?
because I've been shot it so many times since then. But I always thought the targets were tougher back then. But I was also a lot littler and skinnier back then too. So I don't know that I don't know if there's really the big difference in there's harder targets compared to now, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does. What would you say did the targets back then in California prepare you to go shoot elsewhere, like in other regions, and how would you compare that?
You know, traveling outside of California, there was a lot. The targets were a lot tougher. Um, I remember my father had to buy a Shondell machine, so we didn't have any down here.
Oh,
And
you're kidding.
I got my butt kicked starting out because I'd never seen a Shondell before I went to Texas, and there's three of them on one course. Well, there's 12 birds I never hit.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a few things that we didn't have back then that we do now. Obviously, there's not a single target you can't get now in Southern California that you can't find anywhere in the world. But yeah, those were some of the things that I think were lacking as far as presentations and stuff goes. I just think it was probably a little bit tougher back in the day, but for me, I think that's just how I perceive things now.
There were more clubs in SoCal back in the day as well, right? Or am I thinking of that wrong? I keep hearing about, and I've mentioned this before, River Road was a really well-known club in California that's no longer.
Correct. I never got the chance to shoot that place.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that was something Zach talks about a lot, but I never had the chance to shoot that place. I don't know what year that closed. Um, when I first started shooting, Triple B was around, which is now LA Clays. But the Versatis were the ones that owned River Road, and they also started Triple B's.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So
What was the when you're going from California to other states and other places to shoot, what was the general consensus about California shooters back then? I mean, we had Zach coming from here, so obviously people knew about California. You were going out there winning things and doing well as a sub junior and a junior. What was the general consensus about California shooters at the time?
that we didn't know how to shoot. No, I mean everyone in the sporting clays community is it's a family. There's no way around it. I mean, I still have friends that I used to shoot sporting clays with as sub juniors. I still talk to regularly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a really uh, tight knit community that I just think they welcome anybody. So I don't think it has anything to do with hey, you're from California. I don't need to talk to you. I always do preface. I talk to somebody or meet somebody. Hey, don't hold this against me. I'm from California.
Yeah.
But when I lived in Texas, no one guessed I was from California.
Right.
I don't know how many free beers I got at the bar. Hey, I bet you can't guess where I'm from. I got quite a few free beers at the bar because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've absolutely agree with you too. It's been a very welcoming community. It's great, great folks. Made some really good friends through this too, throughout the nation, if you will, and across the pond too, actually. And it's just a great community of folks. Something one of the things I want to help kind of continue to grow it and see what I could do to help in that regard myself by just putting more info out there and getting more people to talk about the sport and just get more people more interested in it because for as awesome as it is, I'm so always surprised by how small it is. I feel like it could be much bigger given the hunting community and all these other adjacent
100%.
communities out there that can, really get into shooting clays.
Yep.
Um, Going back to your competitive journey, what was like probably one of the most embarrassing or humbling moments you've had in your career?
Oh, geez. I've had a few.
Yeah.
Um, oh man. Let's see. I remember one time it was the World Fee Task. It was in Kansas, and I always looked up to Corey Cruz, and I was squatted with him for like a prelim event or something. It was the first time I ever shot with him. First time I ever really met him, and I remember, I remember going up. I was like third in line, but I went up and I thought I was the first one to view targets. I called full, lost pair. I'm like, and I just lost it. I cried my eyes out. I'm like, oh my God. I was like 13 years old. I think it was in '03. I'd never been so embarrassed in my life. Like I just cried in front of my hero. How did I just take a misfire? Oh, I was lost it. I'll never forget that. That
Yeah.
was so embarrassing.
We all have our embarrassing moments, you know. No, I appreciate you sharing that. It's just it's funny how you watch the sport, you watch people through it, who you admire, who you do. So, what was Corey's response, or did he say anything to you at that point, or
Oh, he was a trooper. He
yeah,
was like, "Hey, just brush it off. You're good.
yeah,
Let's go to the next station."
right,
Which, for me, I was already I was
yeah.
already down the hill after that point. After you have a mental breakdown like that, but yeah, no, he was great. I mean, Corey's awesome. It's hard not to like him. He did pretty well last weekend too.
He did. He came up second in the U.S. Open,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
great.
Theo did
Great
well.
shooting.
Todd.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Congrats
So
to those guys. It's funny that you say that. I don't know if it was an embarrassing moment for me, but I remember the first time I shot with Anthony Matarese, and I've never shot with him before. It was the Western Regional Fee Task, and I had to go first, and Anthony was following me, and all I could think in my head was, "Oh my God, one of the world's best coaches is going to be watching every little aspect of my shooting, and I better make my form right. I better do this right. I better do that right." And I shot an 18 out of 25 on that. And I walked away from it. I'm like, God, that sucked. And like, I didn't perform. And then I was like, wait a second. I was watching Anthony shoot the whole time. And that guy works when he shoots. I mean, he's paying attention to every little detail, looking
yep,
at things from different angles. And it dawned on me. I was like, Henning, you idiot. Anthony doesn't give an F what you're doing. He's focused on his game. And so the next peg, I shot a 24 out of 25 because I stopped caring what Anthony was going to think of me, you know?
100%.
But it was fun. It's,
Absolutely.
it's funny how you could get yourself worked up over the stupidest things and create
Oh,
this story in your head about something that's not even happening, you know?
100%. Yep. No, I had somebody come up to me like, I'm just nervous the whole time because you shot right behind me. I'm like, I'm not doing nothing. It just calm down until you realize that. But once you're in the moment, you're like, you get caught up in it, I think.
You do.
That's
You
what
do.
happened with me.
I
So,
had to kind of talk
yeah,
myself out of it because what basically the thing was, who do you think you are that Anthony gives a crap who you are is watching you, you know? He's
exactly.
focused on his own game. He
100%.
doesn't care. But
Yeah.
I just got it in my head. I'm like, oh my God, he's watching how I stand. He's watching how I approach this bird. He's watching how I do this. And it wasn't the case at all, but it was a good lesson
Yeah.
learned for me there.
Yep.
What part of your game took the longest to develop, would you say, and how did you finally crack it?
I'd say the mental game took the longest. I think you can always improve on your mental game. Um, you can be really strong in your mental game, but I think there's always room for improvement in it because I don't know if there's a real reason why I think that. I just mentally, there's only so much physically you can do, I think, and be prepared. You can shoot as many crossers as you want, but I think the mental game is where a lot of your score is going to depend on is how strong mentally you are.
Yeah.
Um,
Why is it
I, you
so
know, I,
elusive, do you think? Why do you think the mental game is so elusive? And that confidence, I guess I should say confidence. Why is confidence so elusive?
um, for different people have different views on that. I think for me, confidence is just how I feel going into the event and how I feel. As long as I think that, as long as I think you're prepared, which I think as long as I'm really hungry and I want to do well, I'm gonna do well.
Mhm.
I don't know so much if it's. I think confidence comes with that, with your mental game. Um, I don't know if there's real. This is what I have to have. I just think it's that feeling and having the right mindset going into the event is
Mhm.
what can make you mentally strong to do well.
Would you say there was a loss that might have taught you more than a win ever could?
Um, I can't. I don't think so. Um, I know you're supposed to take your losses and turn them into advantage, but I can still remember vividly some targets that I missed from 10, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it really taught me anything going forward. I just, you know, you're on to the next station. Try to forget about the last station you had, regardless of what your score is. So I
Yeah.
always just try to look forward, not so much look at the losses and what I did wrong in order to get there.
Do you think it's difficult to stay hungry? Like you've been doing it for a while, right? I mean, do you take breaks so that you could keep that desire, or how do you keep the desire going?
Um, yes and no. I think staying hungry is probably the thing that's the main factor in whether or not I want to do well. But staying hungry is also Jesus, I lost my train of thought here. Can you
Uh,
say that again?
Yeah, I mean, how do you stay hungry? What's been your approach to that? Because I feel like at some point people get burnt out on the game.
Yeah.
They do it a lot. I mean, you said 10,000 registered targets in 1 year. Did you not feel burnt out that year?
No, I did. At the end of it, I was like, "Yeah, we're going to take a break," and I slowed way down. I went back down to 6,000 next year after that. But yeah, I like. For me, it's going hunting. That 4 to 3 month stretch right in there at the very end of the year, right after nationals. That's a big enough break for me to go. And okay, February comes around. February was always the first big tournament out Seminole Cup that we used to go to, um, and I was hungry by then as a sub junior and junior.
I noticed something, and I don't know if there's a correlation here, but a lot of good shooters are also hunters and fishermen as well. Do you think that there's something to that? Just being an outdoorsman or outdoorswoman, is there things that you're taking from hunting that you're applying to shooting?
Probably your instincts.
Okay.
I'm a pretty good instinctive shooter on that part.
Mhm.
I think Derek's probably one of the best ones at it. That's why he can go and pick up a shotgun and shoot any sport and do well regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely think there's, um, but if you shoot a lot and then you go into hunting, I think it actually will benefit you more than if you were a hunter and then came to sporting clays because you're gonna look straight down the barrel if you're a duck hunter, and then you come to sporting clays. You're not supposed to look down the barrel, obviously.
Mhm.
So I think there could be a few drawbacks. It just depends um, on how you were taught and at what point in your shooting or hunting phase you're in. Because for me, I was pretty small. I couldn't hold a 12 gauge up for 100 rounds when I was starting out. So I was able to get fundamentally sound before I had any bad habits. But that also helps when you're young. So,
So you think that there's a benefit? Because I talk to a group of hunters every year at the International Sportsman Expo to get more folks in the sporting clays. And do you feel there's more benefit from them going from clay shooting to hunting in terms of their ability? What about for hunters to go into sporting clays? They just got to change some bad habits because it's a lot different shooting waterfowl than it is shooting clays.
correct. Yeah, I also think it has a matter if you're just starting out, obviously it's just time behind the gun, getting those rounds through. So obviously, someone that's never shot anything, hunting or sporting clays, you give it to a hunter, they're probably going to do a little bit better than the person that's never done it before.
Right.
So because they've just had time behind the gun, and they know how it kind of moves and stuff like that. So they have a basic feel for it. But they could also bring bad habits to it if you're just coming straight from a hunter as well. But obviously, if you're a sporting clay shooter, you're going to probably kick all your friends' butts if you're just going out with just your hunter friends. So,
Right. 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 Well, can you touch a little bit more on the instinct side of that? That's an interesting. It's not something that's new to me in terms of concept, but what do you feel about the instinct from hunting helps you become a better clay shooter?
I don't know if you've ever tried this before, but you ever gone to a station you never seen the target, you just pull it, see
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah, yeah.
I
Puller's choice.
love doing
Just
that.
try it and see what happens.
Yeah. If I don't know what it is in England, that's actually a rule. I mean, if you actually, well, it's not a rule, but if you have a squad in front of you, you can't view a pair unless the other squad's not there. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. So if there's a squad, if you go to England at the World Championships, that's where I saw it. If there's a squad that's in front of you and you're waiting on that squad, you don't get a view pair once you're up.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, because you already get to see their targets.
I actually kind of like that. I mean, you know what?
Yeah,
Here's what I'll tell you though about that. That could be a little misleading because when you're watching it from afar, it could look totally different, right?
yeah,
And then when you get in the cage, it's different. So I
totally
can see that
different.
being a plus or minus. But are you saying that when the squad pulls up right behind the other squad, if they've been able to see the targets, they don't get a view pair anymore?
Yeah, it's up to the trapper discretion. But if you're sitting there and you watch like two or three people, they won't let you view a pair once you're up.
I
You
think that makes a
it's
lot of
your
sense.
time to go.
I think
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, I think it's kind of rude etiquette wise to kind of roll up on a squad while they're shooting. Even if you're quiet or whatnot, it's still a little disruptive of the mojo of your squad. It's not an end of the world thing, but it's just
yeah.
kind of a respectful etiquette thing, in my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's
No,
my,
I totally agree with you. And unless there's a big backup where you
yeah.
have to go and you're sitting down there for a while. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that one.
I think it's very, the right etiquette to let people have their space, let them shoot their thing, let them move on. Then you have plenty of time to come up, look at your targets, do your thing. And I think things can go smoothly that way. But
Yep.
yeah. So you've traveled the world shooting as well. What are some of the best, some of the most fun or your happy places out there?
I've only been to one other place. I was just in England. I went to the World Champ. I was on Team USA as a junior for '08 and 2010. We went to the same place in England,
Mhm.
um, Lake and Heath, which was an experience. I will say about that, the very first targets I ever saw in England, the very first station in the main event, first time I was there, was a true pair off a 144-foot tower. That's what they told me,
Hmm.
and it was a true pair with a MIDI standard going straight away from you. I'm like, welcome to the World Championships in England. It was
How did
so
you
much
do?
fun. I got a 3 out of 6. I did
Okay.
terrible. I did really bad the first year I went. I never seen a driven target in my life before '08. So when I went back, I had to have a redemption. So when I went back in 2010, then that's when I did really well. Won 2 gold, a silver, and 2 bronze medals during that trip. So
Right on.
yeah,
Do
it
you like
was.
traveling internationally? Are you planning on doing that still, or is that something on your agenda?
I don't like traveling internationally. I think if you do it with a good group of friends and stuff, it'd probably be a lot more enjoyable. Um, like if I had Jay go with me right now, that'd be a lot more enjoyable than if I just, went with my wife and kids now.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay. You don't want to take the family out or no?
no, not the year and a half year old right now. No,
Right.
I can't even imagine taking him to what's the airport in London?
Chuck E. Cheese or even that. Or...
Yeah, yeah, I can't even imagine taking him to the corner right now. Dad.
No, that's too good. That's too good.
Yeah.
Hey, so something I found pretty interesting about you, aside from all your accolades and the shooting that you've done and kind of the things you've accomplished at an early age, but you were also inducted into the California State Hall of Fame in 2018. How did that moment hit for you when that happened?
When Tommy told me that I was being inducted, I thought he was crazy. I thought he was lying at first. It was a surreal moment for me. I've been doing this since I won my first state championship when I was 13, and I won every sub junior and junior title all the way till I was 21. I lost the very last year as a junior. Fun fact. Um, but I was very humbled by it. I was very appreciative that someone else acknowledged something that I had put in a lot of time and effort, a lot of sweat and tears and miles down the road to validate the work that I had already put in. So I was very humbled by the whole thing. I didn't know much about it until he's like, "Hey, give me your resume." So I sent it to him, and a few weeks later, he said, "You're in." And I'm like, "In for what?" Like, "You're in the Hall of Fame." I'm like,
That's
"Whoa."
great. That's really
Yeah, it
great.
was pretty. It was pretty awesome. Yeah,
And they don't pick one every year. It's based on the person and not necessarily every year the one is issued. So, which makes it even more special, right? Because it has to go to someone who's obviously accomplished a lot in the game, represented California in a great way. I'm assuming,
yeah,
but this is, what it sounds like from the people that are
it
in it.
is. Yeah,
and have accomplished great things, but have also been a good ambassador for the game in California.
correct. Yeah, which is even more awesome. I think you should always have high standards. If you ever want to achieve anything great, you have to have goals for one. I live by that. If you ever want to accomplish anything good, you have to have goals, and you can set out on those goals. But I think something as prestigious as that, and just being called a Hall of Famer, I don't want to have low expectations for that. I want to have high expectations. So to think that I was able to get into that club with such high expectations meant a lot to me. So
Yeah, no, that's
I
great.
can't say thank you enough to the board and the committee for nominating me and voting on it.
No, that's awesome, man. What would Justin of now tell Justin of I ask a lot of shooters this because I'm always curious like what you would say, but what would you tell your 13-year-old self coming up the ranks, coming up the game, that you learn now? What would you say?
Calm down, slow your
Okay.
hands down, stop shooting in front of things. Um, um, you know, it, I think it's the mindset. You just have fun. I learned from early on that you don't want to know you don't want to know what that person shot by their expressions when they leave a stand. I think that's something that's pretty critical and gets lost in translation, especially these days. Um, for me, it was John Kruger. You couldn't tell if that man hit every bird or missed every bird. He had the same expression walking out of the cage, and he just kept on moving on. So that was one thing that I struggled with early on. Just
Yeah.
compounding things and going in your head, and then your mental game goes to shit in a hurry.
Right, right. No, it's something I'm working on as well myself. There's days I'm good about it, and then there's days I'm putting too much value on a target, and then it shows in my body and my emotions and my vocabulary too, unfortunately. But
Yeah. Oh, you're
um,
good. You'll get there.
we'll see. I do have some goals, and that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on now. I've got a lot of things. Speaking of like personal life and kids and things like that, I don't have kids, and so I think there's different pressures for different people, right? And when those pressures are
100%.
removed, things can get a little bit better for you. But how important is it for you to kind of have that work, family, life balance for your shooting?
It's new for me because 2 years ago when I won state, my son wasn't even born yet. He was a few weeks from being born. So it's a lot different now. Having this bah, 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 just running around, and it's little. If mom ain't there, it's hard to contain that sucker. Just lock him in the Ranger. Just tell my other squad mates, can you just watch him really quick?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult now. I this year especially, I have a lot. My goals have kind of changed. 2 years ago, I was thinking I was just going to go and rewrite the record books for California. But things have changed now with me having a kid, and I'm doing some things hunting wise that once in a lifetime opportunity for me this year at least, that I got to capitalize on. So I'm not focusing nearly as much as I would like to, but um, I'm also working freaking 80-hour weeks right now too. So
Yeah.
trying to balance stuff out with family and stuff is hard. I don't think I have the right answer on how to properly do it. I just go balls to the wall until I'm too tired to do anything.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think, one of those things is it's just one of those hard things to manage. And everyone's got a different scenario because of their work, their life, their personal situation. So, but I think it does ring true that you kind of have to have that balanced, right? Whatever it is, and you set your expectations accordingly to that. And I always wonder, with Anthony Matarese, and I'd love to get him on the podcast, but how he balances all that. I mean, he's got, I forget how many kids now. I think three or four, I
Yeah,
think.
I think
Uh,
four.
Running the business, being a competitor, traveling all over the world, having kids, all those things kind of contribute to stress levels, to challenges. And how does one handle that? As a compartmentalization? Is it, finding the right balance between all of them and making sure that you're good with everything?
Yeah,
Um, everyone handles stress differently. And
100%.
I think most of the people that are good at this game handle stress well. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not saying I'm right, but what would you say to that?
Absolutely. Yeah, and Anthony also has probably one of the most booked schedules of anybody out there.
Right.
Try
Right.
booking something within the next 2 months. It ain't gonna happen.
Right.
You're looking at next year already, which is a testament to him. I mean,
Right.
that many people want to go and train with him. So,
Mhm.
which is pretty awesome. I think, you know, even for me, I know that it's critical that my wife helps me out a lot with that stuff. So she can take the kids and stuff like that. And I think Anthony would probably say the same thing about his wife as well. So shout out to my Shelby. But yes, if you want to do well, you're probably going to have to deal with stress pretty well if you want to do well in the game.
Mhm.
But I don't look at it so much as stress as, you know, as long as you're in the right groove for me, things are rolling, things are a lot easier that way. But yeah, you will get stressed, but you can't let that creep into your mind or else, you know, you can get derailed pretty quickly.
Mhm.
So,
Do you think anything about your guys' training? So your sister also was a top competitor in clay shooting, Katie Fox, and now she's. It seems like she's taken a break away from clay shooting and more focused on horses now. If I've got that correct, I follow her on social media as well. But you both have been successful in the game, right? And I feel like there's some recipe or something about what you guys, your family's done right by you both, or just you two. Like, did you share it because you both were competitive with each other? What do you think was the recipe there?
yeah, so Katie is the complete opposite of me when it comes to mentally getting prepared. I think I touched on it earlier. She has to shoot a lot in order to feel competitive. Like she can actually shoot well. She has to shoot a lot in order to be mentally prepared for a tournament.
Do
I'm
you
the
think
complete
that's because
opposite,
she does a
obviously.
lot of different things? You know, she's also in horses, she's also in
Yes,
other events. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, she's riding horses a lot. I mean, she's on a horse every single day, as
right.
long as the weather allows. Basically, that's her passion, and yeah. So when she goes to shoot a lot, she has to shoot a lot in order to feel really competitive. But it's always been a give or take. She does really well with horses. Her shooting's not nearly as well. But if she does really good in shooting, you know, and vice versa.
Right,
So
right.
if she's shooting really well, then horses are probably on the back burner, and the horses are probably the barn sour at home. But opposite ends, it's just trade offs. There's so many hours in a day.
There really is, it's kind of unfortunate, but would you say so focusing on one thing is definitely the key?
Yeah, 100%.
I find that in the disciplines that I shoot, because I shoot different disciplines, namely Halise, VTask, and sporting. But if I focused more on Halise, I get better at Halise. But if I focus more on sporting, I get better. They're different rhythms, different disciplines, different techniques, and ways you go about it. Um, has sporting just been your main focus, or have you done other disciplines as well?
I didn't even really like shooting feed test that much. I really just love shooting sporting only. I've shot a lot of tournaments and feed test and stuff, mainly back in the day. This year is actually the first year I'm gonna shoot feed test at state, probably at least 5 years.
Okay, so you'll be at state
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, I'll be at state.
Are you doing nationals or any of the other majors?
Nope,
Okay,
that's the only one. I try to go to the California state in a regional every year, but I'm gonna be sheep hunting this year, so I'm not gonna be able to make it to regionals up in Idaho at Nick's place, which sucks because I really wanted to go up there, but next year, the
yeah,
year after.
yeah. Same with me. Unfortunately, I have a wedding to go to, and I won't be able to make it to Western, but definitely looking forward to going to nationals. And I've signed up for the Jack Links as well, so I'm hope that'll be my first
Nice.
Jack Links. Have you been?
No, I heard nothing but great things about that place though,
Same, same.
and the tournament. I know it
Right.
books out quick.
Yeah, I mean, I literally booked it right after the last Jack Links, and it was almost already booked, fully booked.
Crazy.
So it is kind of
It's
crazy.
crazy.
I'm hoping that they start, expanding more events like this because almost regionally, it feels like when a lot of stuff is Midwest and to the East, right? There's very
Hmm.
little going on here in the West Coast. Unfortunately, we've got our regionals, either California, Arizona, but none of the majors really come out this way. I've found, and I don't know if that's a function of the lack of clubs out here to do it. I feel like there's clubs out here that could pull it off, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a few clubs out here that do it. It's just really hard too, because you have to have everything right. You got to have enough hotels and staff and all these things to be able to. I've never been on that side of sporting clays, so I couldn't tell you. I know a little bit about it, but not nearly as much. But I want to elaborate on something you were talking about with the Jack Links thing. I remember the first time I ever went to Florida.
Mhm.
It was at Team Ranch for the Seminole Cup, and they had the make or break out there, and we were shooting over the top this huge pond out there. I'll never forget the freaking gators floating in the water. I'm like, you can't get this stuff back at home.
Yeah.
It's so freaking cool. You're talking about traveling, so I it's always cool for us, coming out there, going out to the East Coast and traveling. But I think that's what makes this sport so cool as well, because you can go and do all these things with pretty much your traveling family, because that's what it is.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, all the same, names, people, places. Over time, it just becomes, one cohesive group. But what about internationally, though? Do you feel the same internationally, or is it more localized to the U.S. and then the European family, if you will, is different?
I don't, I can't really say too much about the international. I only went twice. I only hung out with, I shot a few clubs around in England when I was there in 2010. The last time I was there, I traveled a little bit more around there before the main shoot started. But I didn't really connect with that many Europeans, so I can't tell you. I know you're glad to see more Americans when you're on foreign territory.
Yeah.
It's always good to see familiar faces, which helps you out. So I
Well,
never really liked international travel that much.
oh,
I just think the
really?
price. I just never enjoyed the process of trying to get there. I
Sure.
just thought too much of a hassle. I'd much rather just wake up from my own bed and travel 20 minutes down the road to the nearest club, rather than. I do like the different presentations you get. Like when we went to England, driven targets. I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to England in June next year. I have a buddy who lives out there. Been a good friend of mine since we were little kids, and he just picked up a shotgun. And he's been really kind of getting into the clay shooting sport. So our goal is to go visit a number of clubs, just go shoot them, and just see kind of what they're about. So I'm really excited about that. I do enjoy international travel, although I haven't done it in a long time. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting back out and getting some stamps on my passport. But what I find interesting about the shotgun sports is that it's a worldwide thing, right? It's not a
100%.
phenomena, but it's a culture that's global, and it's a culture that kind of stemmed from European uh, traditions and rituals and things, but now has expanded into other cultures and other areas well beyond its original roots. You're starting to see countries like the Middle East, countries in the Middle East, South Asia get into shotgun shooting. And it's opening up to a wider demographic than I'm sure it ever has been. So I think it'll be interesting. I'd love to go to Cyprus. I'd love to go to, Hungary and other places that just I've never been to before and just kind of see what the culture's like out there too around
Yeah,
shotgunning.
totally. I will say I do want to go to Dubai.
Yeah.
I heard nothing but awesome things about that shoot in Dubai. So I probably will cross that off one day. It's just not going to be the next 5 years, probably. I'll probably be further down the road, but I will probably
Wait
cross
till your
that off.
son's a little older.
Yeah. Yeah. We can just send them off to the grandparents one day and then I'll go out and shoot.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. There you go. Well, hey, if you need a travel buddy, I'm in. I love Dubai. I've been to Dubai. It's a great place. I've not shot there, but it's a great place to go and visit.
That's what I heard. I heard nothing but great things.
Well, hey man, I appreciate your time on the podcast. I wanted to interview you because of your background and kind of what you've done in the sport, not only just locally but nationally as well. I think you've done some great things and you've got some great insights. We've had a chance to chat about the game on a deeper level, and I've always appreciated your insights on that. So I thank you again for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, Henny. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, cool, man. Well,
It was great talking with you.
catch you at the state for sure.
Sounds good.
All right,
Talk to you
Justin,
then.
take care.
Bye bye.